Hey there students, it's Mr. V, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you guys how to make letters in 3D. This is for your lab exercise called 3D Creative Lettering. Now as you can see, I start with the letter T. It's actually very simple. All you do is you write the letter as you want to see it. This is your skeleton, and you simply add skin to the outside and the inside of your letter. You then erase when you're finished, and there is what we call a block letter. Let's try the same thing with the letter R. A little bit different than a T. We need to add skin to the inside as well, but as you see, it's the exact same process. Letter Q, a little bit more complex. The secret is to do exactly on the outside and the inside what you're doing on what the lines are looking like on your skeleton. So here we're taking it a step further, just drawing the word name, connecting the corners to your VP. Make sure you connect your proper corners. And again, you need to have a good proper understanding of one-point perspective to do this before attempting this assignment. That way you know which corners, inner and outer, to connect and which not to connect. So here I'm just kind of figuring out how far back to have my form go into the distance, and I'm using my tool as a measuring rod. Just put the tip of your pencil lead on one area and put your fingertip on the pencil, and it's kind of like using a ruler. And that way you can calculate how far back to close everything off. And I'm just using my z-axis lines, measuring with my tool, and making a little mark, and then that is telling me where to close off everything. And that's one of the ways that you do rounded forms, like the back of this N would be pretty difficult to do, kind of tricky. Especially this curve, I connect a bunch of little z-plane or z-axis lines to my VP just to help guide me in making a couple of points to connect the back of the form. And it's okay to mold your letters as you work. Treat them like clay in a sense. You know, if you see something that you want to do it, even if it deviates from your original planning. And just adding value to the z-planes here so that the viewer can kind of tell the difference between the shadows and the front planes of the letters. Now here's a quick little demo on how to connect rounded corners to your VP. What you do is you put your lead on your VP, rotate your ruler till it just touches the outside edge of the curve, and then that's how you know which part of the corner to connect. But what do you do in this circumstance? I mean, there are no other corners. Okay, well, I mentioned it earlier. You just connect a bunch of z-axis lines lightly to your VP, like so, and then use your tool to measure how far in you want it to go. I want mine to be about 1 inch. So I take my pencil, line it up, and on each of those lines that I drew, I just tilt my pencil forward a little bit, make a little dot. And then it's essentially connecting the dots. Those little dots help guide your mind in where to put the back of the form. Now naturally, since the front of the form is a gentle sweeping curve, you want the back of the form to be the exact same. So I rough it in with a light line first, and then I go and I refine it afterward. And voila! A rounded form in 3D. Now here's a block letter R, just like I had shown you with the letter T, and what I'm doing is I'm creating a skeleton for kind of a graffiti look. And you see I'm letting the skeleton break because I want parts of the letters to be in front and parts to be in behind. It's the exact same process. Just go and add skin to the outside and the inside of your shape. I made a little mistake. My skin touched the skeleton here. Draw on the inside. And I'd recommend that you erase some of your unnecessary lines as you go. It just makes it a little bit less confusing as you draw. And once you know how to connect all your corners, the rest is cake. This is the easy part. Using my tool to measure. That's especially important when you have strange shapes like an arrow or some parts of it cut in front of parts that are behind it too. All right, so for this one, I'm doing a real swirly kind of a letter. I'm going to have some parts actually of the letter in front of other parts of the letter, kind of like ribbon. And it's still the same process. You've got a skeleton, and that's the swirly lines. And right now I'm just doing the outside of my skeleton. And what happens in the skeleton needs to happen on the front and the back of your form. One thing to remember is to take into account how thick the front of your letters will be. Anyway, it's very easy to make very thin letters, and since on this assignment we're going to be drawing an image on the front plane of the letter, you want to make sure that your letters are thick enough to hold that image that you're going to draw. And erasing the skeleton, and I decided to put one part of the swirl in front of the other. So I just carried one of those contour lines through one of the swirls. Now I'm adding what's called line weight. You can see that in our class recording. Line weight, rule of thumb is you want some lines thick and some lines thin. The heavier lines go where there's less light. And so wherever there be less light, make your lines thicker and heavier. It really makes things pop up off the page. It also helps your viewer tell apart certain parts of the form. Makes it easier for their brain to look at it and go, oh, this is one part and that is another. And just using the basics I showed you earlier for connecting rounded corners to your VP, that's all I'm doing here. I'm finding any corners that I can and making little guidelines, because pretty much all of this is a rounded form. Here I'm going in to add line weight. Again, the rules for line weight are wherever the least amount of light is, you put a heavier line. Also, if there's a form in front of another, you want that form that's closer to you to be heavier in line weight. And finally, for outlines on your form, okay, you want the total outline of your contours to be bold as well. So you're going to have a bold line around the main shape of your form. You're going to have a bold line that is in front of the other parts of your form, and that'll be bolder than, the one that goes around your outline. And you also want to have bold lines where there's less light. And try not to get in the habit of thinking that your lines need to be the same thickness. No, you want your line to be dynamic, ever-changing, to get bolder in some parts and lighter in others. Another rule of thumb is wherever your lines converge onto a point, like an outer point, kind of like the end of this arrow right here, you want your line weight to taper off and get thinner. Wherever you have an inner corner, like right here in the inner part of the arrow, you want your lines to bunch up and get fatter and heavier. Makes them look really cool, makes the image pop. Go over the line multiple times to have nice, crisp line work. I'm not sketching, I'm actually pushing it about a pressure 3 the whole time I'm doing this. Just gently going over the contour. Shoot for bold, tight, chiseled, razor-sharp lines when you work. Here's an example of line weight on a sphere, specifically with a light source. Okay, I'm going to have the light source up at about 1 o'clock. And so naturally at about the opposite of 1 o'clock, which would be 7 o'clock, I'm going to have the line weight get thicker and heavier. It's not shading, it's just a change in the contour line to give the illusion that there's kind of a bump, like a raised surface here. rotate your paper so that you can get some nice clean lines. And then finally I'm going to demonstrate a point of tension here. This is where the light directly hits. I erased a little bit of the line, made it very light. It makes it look 3D. So here I'm demonstrating more complex letters. This one is like a slime coming off of a letter. It's really difficult because I had to connect every single little drip to the VP because this is a 3D form, and then close off the back of the form the same as the front. You're just using your principle for connecting round edges to a VP. And how do you do slime? Well, just imagine gravity. Gravity pulls things down. All right, in this one, I'm making a word picture out of a person's name. This guy's name is Fred, and Fred apparently likes firearms. So I made a shape of a gun, and I made the letters fit inside of that shape. And just kind of creatively spaced them out so that we could see the 3D planes of the letters. Remember to make your contours very bold on the outside of the plane of the letter, the forward-facing planes. That helps your viewer tell all the corners apart, because drawing like this is kind of complicated. Adding value. Remember your rules for lighting. Some parts will be darker than others. And I'm adding a drawing inside. And finally, you want your drawing to be a lot lighter than the line and value work for the lettering. Hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to seeing you guys in class. Take care.